in Green Revolution. He himself is a dream envisioned, ingrained with humanitarian intellect, who made the world stop for him. What more to say? We are blessed to have with us the greatest global living legend of Indian agriculture. This most exciting lecture, I hope, will be a doorway to nostalgia, reminiscing memorable experience, sharing the stories of hard work and success, most especially to renew and celebrate this wonderful journey with his beloved alma mater, IARI. We begin with an invocation by PG school students.
जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमाम्यहम्। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमाम्यहम्। नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागेश्वरी नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागेश्वरी शरणं ते गच्छाम्यहम्। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमाम्यहम्। त्वमसि शरण्या त्रिभुवनधन्या त्वमसि शरण्या त्रिभुवनधन्या सुरमुनिवन्दितचरणा नवरसमधुरा कविता मुखरा नवरसमधुरा कविता मुखरा स्मितरुचिरुचिराभरणा। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमाम्यहम्। आसीना भव मानसहंसे आसीना भव मानसहंसे कुंजतुहिना शशिधवले हर जडतां कुरु बुद्धिविकासं हर जडतां कुरु बुद्धिविकासं शीतपङ्कजतनु विमले। जय जय हे भगवती सुर भारती तव चरणों प्रणमाम्यहम्। प्रणमाम्यहम् 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 प्रणमाम्यहम्।
Let's begin this propitious occasion with the traditional lamp lighting ceremony as a tribute to Ma Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. May I now request the chief guest and other dignitaries on the dais to light the auspicious ceremonial lamp. Thank you. With the permission of the chair, I now request Dr. R.K. Jain, Dean and Joint Director Education IARI, to give the formal welcome address.
Very good evening. Distinguished dignitaries on the dais, respected Professor Swaminathan ji, Chairman and Chief Mentor of MSS Swaminathan Research Foundation and Speaker of today's evening lecture. Professor V.L. Chopra ji, former member Planning Commission and Chief Guest of today's function. Dr. Tirlochan Mahapatra, Director IARI, Dr. Vinod, Professor Genetics, distinguished dignitaries of the dais, to name a few: Dr. Vassal, Professor Anupam Verma, project directors, head of the divisions, professors, scientists, and my dear distinguished colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, on my own behalf and on behalf of Director IARI, I welcome you all for the special lecture to be addressed by respected Professor Swaminathan ji. As rightly said, it is a rare evening that we have two living legends in the field of Indian agriculture sharing the same dais. In fact, they are responsible for transforming Indian agriculture from ship to mouth to food and nutritional security to food bill. Before I proceed further, I would like to request the Director IARI to welcome Professor Swaminathan ji with a bouquet of flowers, please. I would also request the Director IARI to welcome the chairman of today's function with a bouquet of flowers, please. I would take this opportunity to request Dr. Vinod to welcome the Director IARI also with a bouquet of flowers, please. Before I invite Dr. Mahapatra, Director IARI, to introduce chairmen of today's function, I wish to make a special request to our role models, Professor Swaminathan ji and Professor Chopra ji. Though I know there is no ready-made prescription, yet I would like to learn what steps PG School of IARI should take to join the club of top 500 institutions of the world. If Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, which got the deemed university status at the same time when IARI got, can find a place in top 500 world institutions, why not IARI? So may I request that Professor Swaminathan ji as well as Professor Chopra would really suggest that what steps PG school should take. With these few words, I would request the Director IARI to introduce the chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Trilochan Mahapatra, Director, the navigator of this flagship of knowledge, to formally introduce the chairman.
Respected Professor Swaminathan, respected Professor Chopra, my colleague Dr. Jain, Dr. Vinod, Dr. Vassal, Dr. Anupam Verma, many other dignitaries of the dais, the staff and students of this premier institute. Dr. Jain has given a brief introduction to this particular evening interaction session, but let me take another 1 minute and elaborate. In fact, when I learned that Professor Swaminathan is coming to this institute for the function of the task which was held here in this particular hall in the morning, I in fact, out of curiosity, approached him that if it would be possible for him to spare some time to interact with particularly the newly admitted students and of course the other students of PG school and definitely with the staff of this institute. And he readily agreed, despite the fact that he has been extremely busy, and in fact for the whole day, just now we are discussing, at this advanced age, he was completely busy for the day. You and me might be taking a nap here and there and trying to escape, but see the person before us at the age of 90 and standing tall, standing engaged for the whole day and not hesitating to be before you, to interact with you, and then talk about his experiences of 65 years just to excite you, urge upon you that there is a lot to be done and we all are here, must stand up to do it. Professor Swaminathan, it was already said and doesn't need an introduction, and the chairman of this session would be briefly introducing the speaker. But none of you need any introduction. But that part I'm not really going into. But sir, I only express my heartfelt gratitude to you for so kindly agreeing to the request to spare this evening for us, for my young colleagues here, so that they are inspired. So I thank you very much, sir, for being so kind. And when I was at CRRI, I was there for 3.5 years, and I requested, and he visited 3 times CRRI, despite the problem in working and all that. He visited 3 times. And that's the kind of affection and affiliation he has to the institute where he was associated, and that to IARI, where he worked for a long time and built many of the buildings that you see today, including this auditorium. And that's what he said in the morning, how it was functionalized. And what was the FAST program? FAST program was a challenging one, that how to meet challenges. But anyway, I'm not really trespassing that part. But my job is to introduce the chairman of this evening, this particular session. Professor V.L. Chopra, again, a towering personality. And in fact, what you see, friends, today, this evening, 3 generations of students of this institute in front of you and speaking before you, starting from 40s, late 40s to early 90s. And that's the kind of institution IRI has been and contributing, still contributing to human resource development. And Professor V.L. Chopra, the OD student of Professor Swaminathan, and did his associateship from this institution, and subsequently rose during his career graph. You'll see many positions he occupied, including Director General, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, Secretary there, Member Planning Commission, and BP Pal Chair, National Professor position, and so on and so forth. And in fact, while entering this hall, he specifically instructed me not to have a very long introduction of him. And in fact, he said that IRI is home to us. And it doesn't need, we keep coming to this institute. And for the members of the family, you don't need lengthy introduction. Very true, sir. We humbly accept that. And the whole house acknowledges that whether Professor Swaminathan or you, we consider all of you as members of this family of Indian Agriculture Research Institute. And we take pride in what you are, what you have done, what you think about, what you do for this institute, and what you feel for this institute. And as it was said by Dr. Jain, seeking your advice. In fact, when we keep interacting with both of you, this advice keep coming every now and then, how to really lift this institute to newer heights. Professor Chopra, builder of the Biotechnology Center that you see today as the National Research Center for Plant Biotechnology, contributing to the control of reproductive system in mustard, leading to development of several male sterile lines, again leading to development of new hybrids by use of those male sterile lines. Use of tissue culture method as a method to introduce variation, genetic variation, and develop new variety of mustard. That is a milestone. And so on and so forth. Many different contributions. In fact, under his stewardship, the molecular breeding program was initiated at this institute under his able guidance. In fact, in 80s, when the world was just recognizing the importance of molecular breeding, and this country, in fact, recognized this, and that too, Professor V.L. Chopra himself at the then Biotechnology Center, where he was heading. And subsequent to that, you all know, he rose to different positions. Professor Chopra, to his credit, has several awards and honors. I'm not going to really list before you, but we all know what he is, and we all know how he has been contributing. At this age, editing several books, and some of us also read his books, some of these textbooks and edited books. Sir, we are fortunate that you are here. Without prolonging the introduction, I express my sincere gratitude to you to readily agreeing to chair this session. In fact, when I requested, he said that when Professor Swaminathan is going to speak, how do I chair? And it's not easy to chair this session. But anyway, since you are requesting, I will come. Thank you very much, sir, for readily agreeing, hesitantly agreeing rather, and also for being here in this afternoon. And I strongly believe that our young colleagues will have a flair of the way they speak and what they want to speak, how measured they are in when they speak. And with these words, minimum words of introduction, this is a long 2-3 pages of introduction with me. To talk, the government of India has honored him with the Padma Vibhushan, and you can't have more than that, anything, to count. Sir, with these words, I stop here. I beg to stop here, and I thank you very much for being here in large number in this evening. And our focus is to listening to Professor Swaminathan. Without taking more time, I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request the chairman of today's function, Padma Bhushan, Professor V.L. Chopra, to formally introduce today's speaker to this august audience.
Professor Swaminathan, Dr. Mahapatra, Dr. Jain, Dr. Vinod, many distinguished colleagues in the audience, students of IARI, research scholars, ladies and gentlemen. I've been tasked to introduce Professor Swaminathan. I find it hard to do that because it's like introducing sun to the morning. All that I would say in this, the audience today consists of people who are net savvy, and I'm quite sure that they will get the details which I will miss intentionally not to elaborate on. Professor Swaminathan is a legend, living legend. He is marked by class in whatever he has done in his life, which I hope and pray will continue for a long time for more contributions to come. In education, he was educated at the University of Madras, at the IARI, and in the University of Cambridge. Professionally, he has held most coveted positions both in India and across the world. In India, he was the director of my institute, the IARI, the Director General of the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, and Secretary to the Government of India. He was the only Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, designated as Principal Secretary, Agriculture and Irrigation at that time. He was member of the Planning Commission, and any distinguished position that you can think of, Dr. Swaminathan has been associated with it. Internationally, he was the Director General of the International Rice Research Institute, and in all organizations that count in this world, he has had a major contribution to, including the FAO, where he was the independent chairman of the FAO Council, the WHO, the environment, and everything else that you can think of. He is one of the most decorated scientists that I know of across all spectrums of science, not just agriculture. It will require a full seminar to even enumerate the numerous awards that he holds. Most prestigious, most revered awards that one can think of. More than anything else, he has been a teacher not only to me, but to many who have contributed in their own humble way to the development of science and agriculture development of this country. Professor Swaminathan, it is only an encrypted summary of the honors and laurels that you carry on your strong shoulders, and we are hoping that there are many more to come that I will have the honor of enumerating some other day. It has been a great pleasure to be your student and to be the audience of the lecture that you are going to give today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor M.S. Swaminathan to deliver the special lecture on 65 years of adventure in agriculture research and development.
Professor Chopra, Director Dr. Mahapatra, Dr. Jain, Dr. Vinod, and my dear friends, both students, scholars, scientists who are sitting in the auditorium. This morning I referred to briefly the 50-year journey in using this auditorium, and also how we had conditions which are extremely bad. I said the first seminar held here is how to make the prophets of doom wrong, how to falsify their prophets. That was one of the first seminars we had in this room. I congratulate all the scholars who have joined this institution, because this is the brightest jewel in the crown of not only ICR, but agricultural research worldwide. I would say I'm saying it with some knowledge of institutions. Therefore, you are lucky to have come here, and I hope you will continue the great traditions for which this institute stands for. Not only academic excellence, but also social relevance, a concern for other human beings that has been part of the culture. Dr. B.P. Paul, I joined this institute in 1947, September, as a postgraduate student. In those days, it was called Associate IARI. It has not become a university. 1958, IARI became a deemed university. Until then, it was a postgraduate institution recognized by UPSC. Associate IARI was recognized as MSc. I joined as a student in late September 1947. Dr. B.P. Paul was then the head of what was called the botany division. I changed the name of the division to genetics division when I became director in 1966, because I thought much more appropriate. It was not only pure botany, but a little larger component of genetics. Dr. Paul, this was produced, the stamp on the 100th year of Dr. Paul. The government was kind enough to issue a stamp. The two passions for him, one was the wheat, particularly resistance to wheat rust, and the other was the roses, and bougainvilleas also, bougainvilleas, roses. I still recall in the so-called botany division, from where we just came, Dr. Mahapatra and Dr. Ashok, they brought me from here. Jawaharlal Nehru as a Prime Minister, used to walk around sometimes just to come and see the roses. He would come to see the roses. One day I was the head of the department, and suddenly he dropped in. I got a message that the Prime Minister is coming. In those days, there was not that kind of security and so on. He came and he said, "You don't waste your time, I'm just going round." He just went round. Next morning I saw in the newspapers, India had liberated Goa. That means that day he must have taken very important decisions. The Indian troops were going to Goa, but still he found relaxation in coming here and going around the roses. I think I'm mentioning it because there's an art of relaxation also. You'll have to. I once mentioned to Indira Gandhi when she was very tense, I said, you have not inherited the gene from your father to relax. This is what happened. And she suddenly smiled and changed her mind. Anyway, this is a great institution. I did my associate IRI. That thesis is still there. Thesis is, I think, Vinod and Dr. Prabhu showed me last time, not Vinod, I'm sorry, Ashok and Prabhu showed me last time the thesis, associate IRI thesis. From here, Dr. Jain Mukherjee was then the director, 1949. He asked me one day, can I recommend you for a UNESCO fellowship to go to Holland? I said, I'll feel very honored you are recommending me. And he recommended, and IARI had a reputation, so I was selected. I went to Holland and joined the Department of Genetics there, the Institute of Genetics. This morning, the former Vice Chancellor of Holland was here. He is now the head of CIMIT. Many of you might have, he succeeded Lumpkin. Dr. Professor Prakan was a famous geneticist, and this was the building where I had a room. And the project I had working on was breeding for nematode resistance, Heterodira rostracensis. This is for those of you who know the nematodes. There are Department of Nematology we have. Heterodira rostracensis became very important, largely because during the war, the Dutch are very good in terms of agronomic management, water management, agronomic management. But during the war, they had to not follow the rotation. Usually they have a crop rotation, but they had to grow potato after potato, potato after potato, with the result that polder lands got filled with the nematode. And there was a species called Solanum polyadenium from Peru, which had resistance genes, and I was trying to transfer those genes to. Now, from Holland, I went to Cambridge University to do my doctorate degree, 1950. For 49 to 50, it was a one-year fellowship, the UNESCO, to go to Holland, but I could have got it more extended. But I wanted to continue the work I started in Holland on transfer of genes from species of Solanum, tuber-bearing Solanum. At IARI, my thesis was non-tuber-bearing Solanum, like our eggplant, brinjal, and so on. My college was Fitzwilliam College, and the college was good enough to elect me as a fellow. That's an honor in Cambridge to be elected a fellow of your own college. Trinity, Dr. Professor Amartya Sen was also Master of Trinity. He was a Master of Trinity. There are many of our people. And the major work in Cambridge was to go through what was called the Hawkes collection, J.J. Hawkes collection, potato collection from all over Latin America, which is the home of potato. The Peru-Bolivian borders, this is the area where the center of origin of potato. And there you get a very wide range of potato varieties. My own task was to transfer genes for resistance to both blade blight, which is the problem of Ireland, which caused the late blight disease, is the one which caused the problem of the Great Irish Famine. You go to Ireland, you will find a big statue of the Irish famine with a potato crop shown there. Well, the title of the thesis is not here, unfortunately. In the genetics division as my associate IARI thesis, but PhD thesis is in our foundation. It was largely species differentiation and nature of polyploidy in certain species of the genus Solanum, including the origin of potato. And 1952, I received the earned degree. Many times honorary doctorates, I have about 100 or so, but this was earned. This is the only earned one. This is by working for the thesis and developing it. From there, I had a paper in American Potato Journal, and that attracted the attention of the University of Wisconsin. They had been working on developing a number of varieties where transgenic material, but at that time, in 1950s, we didn't yet have 53 only Watson Crick double helix came. There was no method of transfer of genes by non-reproductive methods. So here, the University of Wisconsin, the gene transfer in potato, the cross-sexual barriers was the main thing. I took up, within the time available there, I concentrated on frost resistance, because those who know that geography of that area, Madison, Wisconsin, the temperature goes down to -4, -5, -6 during the winter, even lower. Therefore, frost resistance is a very important problem. There was a species, Solanum caule, which had the frost resistance, and those days there was no normal recombinant DNA technology. Therefore, you had to use all kinds of methods. In this particular case, I had to cut off the style and the stigma and put an artificial stigma and get it pollinated from the two species, Solanum tuberosum and Solanum caule. And that was released later on, called Alaska frostless. The variety was released. It goes about -4, -5 degrees less. When I finished my work in Wisconsin, I was offered a regular position there, but I said I have not come here. Some of them are quoted. I didn't come abroad for a job. I came abroad to learn something and develop some expertise in the field of genetics, cytogenetics, and breeding. So when I came back to India in the early 1954, jobs were very difficult in those days. There was not very many jobs, and fortunately, my older professor, Professor N. Parthasarathi, who was also the director of CRRI, and who used to be professor here in IARI, Dr. Paul was the head, Dr. Parthasarathi was a professor. He said, I have got a short-term job from FAO, Indica japonica hybridization. We want to transfer the genes for fertilizer response from japonicas to indicas. Will you come? I said, I will come. I was sitting at home, I will come. So I went to Cuttack and worked on that Indica japonica hybridization program. For very many reasons, later on we had the short varieties of rice, the DG gene, so we didn't have to go. But Dr. Ramaya, I have put it in writing that the seeds of the Green Revolution were sown in the fields of CRRI. The reason was the first institution where the breeding work objectively was fertilizer response and higher yield, productivity improvement. Later on it was started in wheat and so on, but it was rice. Indica japonica hybridization program, the beginning of the yield revolution in rice. The varieties like ADT 27 in Auditorium and Mashuri in Malaysia, which came out of that particular program. Meanwhile, India had become independent. In fact, I came soon after independence. August 15, 1947 was independence. I came end of September 47. So the Jawaharlal Nehru had a big dream for India. He had a great vision. One of the things he was clear, just like our present Prime Minister also is giving emphasis on irrigation. Similarly, he felt that multi-purpose power projects like Bakra Nangal, he was keen on power generation as well as irrigation and drinking water, all of them. The Bakra, what he called the new temples of India. Irrigation was one, area under irrigation was going up. Fertilizer was another one. These are IFCO and CRIFCO, two of very successful cooperatives, and they do enormously beneficial work, both of them, CRIFCO and IFCO. But the idea was fertilizer is important. Our soils, as was written by one of the authors, Dr. Krishnamurthy, Hyderabad, our soils, Indian soils, are hungry and thirsty. You have to overcome hunger by giving nutrition. This morning it was discussed in the soils discussion. At the same time, our soils are thirsty. You know very well what is happening in Marathwada and so on now. This year, the monsoon has been somewhat erratic, and many of our farmers are suffering due to lack of irrigation water. The Royal Commission on Agriculture, at that time only we had thought of developing varieties which will tolerate higher nutrition, soil nutrition, and irrigation. And we had some strains, but they were not doing that way. As soon as the new genes came, in the case of the wheat, they came originally from the Northern Station in Japan. Dr. Gunziro Inizuka identified them. In the case of rice, the DG came from China, mainland of China, and then it went to Taiwan. From Taiwan, it went to IARI. Through IARI, it went everywhere. That's how the new plant type, what is called the new architecture, designing new plant architecture which can respond to nitrogen as well as, oh, I'm so sorry, I've gone to the last one. Can you put it back? Because there is no light, so I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Well, as soon as our irrigation projects were ready and the fertilizer factories were ready, the government started what was called IADP, the Intensive Agriculture District Project Program. I can use this one probably to change. IADP, many of you have heard about it. The idea of IADP was, I can use this. Oh, here. fertilizer production. The IADP was started in 15 districts during 1963-64. The idea was to get the best out of fertilizer and water, irrigation water and fertilizer. But unfortunately, as I have written here, for example, I'm going rather fast, but those of you who would like to go through it, I'm sure the director can make available. Unfortunately, the impact on yield improvement was not up to expectation, since the package of practices missed one important ingredient, namely a genetic strain which can respond to the rest of the package. Meanwhile, the Royal Commission on Agriculture, 1925, I wanted to know the people who are doing research here, even as early as 1925, then Viceroy, the President of the Royal Commission on Agriculture, Lord Linlithgow, he wrote how efficient the organization, which is built up for demonstration and propaganda, be, unless that organization is based on a solid foundation provided by research, it will be merely a house built on sand. The strong words, the importance of research, which many of you. That is how I have already explained this slide. The Green Revolution, the beginning of the Green Revolution was the plant architecture revolution. Both physiology of the plant as well as the anatomical structure were changed. The new kind of plant type would stand erect. I just saw in the genetics division fields, so many beautiful plant types which are there, both in wheat and rice. It more or less happened almost at the same time. That was good fortune. So our country started a high yielding varieties program with 5 different crops: wheat and rice, the semi-dwarf variety, corn, maize, sorghum and pearl millet, bajra, all of them are hybrids. In one case, the exploitation of hybrid vigor or heterosis, the other exploitation of a new plant type. Dr. Norman Borlaug was mentioned this morning also. We got our material, initial material of semi-dwarf varieties with the northern dwarfing genes from Dr. Borlaug. He visited India, he went round. Next to him is one Dr. Glenn Anderson, who used to work here along with Dr. S.P. Kohli as a coordinator of our wheat program. A very fine person, and Dr. H.K. Jain. 1964, advent of the dwarf wheat breeding program. I think 1964-65 was the harvest. I am told by Dr. Ayyappan that he is having a meeting here to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Green Revolution. That is from 1965 onwards. One of the points which we were very clear from the beginning, this kind of change in architecture, change in physiology, ability to yield more will come only if there is a multidisciplinary approach. And plant pathology became exceedingly important. Because you have new strains coming all the time, the disease can break down. And therefore, one of the first things we did was Dr. Prasada, Dr. L.M. Joshi, those enormous amount of work they did in identifying the various strains of yellow rust, stem rust and stripe rust, and then trying to checkmate them by putting resistant genes at the correct time. To sort of what I call need for genetic checkmating of new disease threats. Even today, even in medical sciences, this has become important. New strain of tuberculosis and so on. They all the time come. And with climate change, you may have more problems. The innovations in the 1960s, our main aim was synergy between technology and public policy. And public policy without support, we can show how to increase the yield, but unless the pricing, input-output pricing, as well as import-export policies are right, the economics will not right. For the farmer, the economics is most important. Unless he can earn some money, why should he invest? And therefore, we started a number of programs generating yield consciousness, how to create more yield, national demonstrations, National Tonnage Club of Farmers, the seed village, starting with the Jonti seed village, where Indira Gandhi herself came to open the cooperative. And public policy, the high yielding varieties program I mentioned to you in 5 crops, minimum support price, public procurement, the Food Corporation of India was established, the Agriculture Costs and Prices Commission was established, and above all, public purchase and public distribution. This one aspect is very important. In fact, because in our country, procurement at a remunerative price, that is a very important trigger for higher production. 1966, I became director, like Dr. Mahapatra and others who are sitting here. And one of the things which we wanted to do was to increase the infrastructure, scientific infrastructure in the we set up a gamma garden which is not there. It's a 200 curie cobalt 60 source for chronic irradiation of horticultural crops. Set up the Pulses Research Laboratory near the Water Technology Center was the first prefabricated building which we built here. That's the only building which is a prefabricated. We had to take too much permission for getting that done. Then the Nuclear Research Laboratory and so all of them came in that period. And I said earlier, synergy between technology and public policy is very important. Whether it is today or yesterday, it is very important. Fortunately, we had two political leaders, very important political leaders in terms of not only in agriculture. C. Subramaniam, Bharat Ratna Subramaniam, he overruled all officers. Whenever a proposal went from IARI, he immediately approved it. It doesn't matter, he said, we are in a very bad situation. We are leading a ship-to-mouth existence. Give them a chance. That's what once there was an administrative note opposing something which I had sent, and he wrote there, nothing can be worse than the present situation. Give them a chance to do what they want. That was the national demonstration. And Indira Gandhi was a great supporter of science, as you know, Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi. They had Indira Gandhi and Bharat Ratna Subramaniam provided the needed political and policy support. But it was clear even at that time, you see tomorrow, this week, the UN Sustainable Development Decade, SDG, Millennium Development Goals are over, the Sustainable Development Goals are starting, but it was clear even at the time. This is my lecture at the Science Congress in January 1968 at Varanasi, 1968, when I said, unless you think of sustainability, intensive cultivation of land without conservation of soil fertility and soil structure would ultimately lead to the spring up. Many have been quoted, many have quoted, but you can go through it, including the prediction. Today, Punjab, some trains are called cancer trains. I have said here in the statement that if you use pesticides wrongly, enormous residues of pesticides will cause problems. Now, there was a criticism from the environmentalists of the Green Revolution. They said it is spoiling the land, it is spoiling the groundwater, it is increasing salinization and so on. And therefore, what I pointed out was, Green Revolution is another term for improvement of production through productivity improvement, not through area expansion, through productivity improvement. And therefore, we have no other way. Land is a diminishing resource for agriculture. We have no other way except to produce more from less land. So I said, I coined the term evergreen revolution. I defined evergreen revolution as increasing productivity in perpetuity without ecological harm. To give you an example, the world requires 50% more rice in 2030 than in 2004, with approximately 30% less arable land than today. This is your challenge. All those who are sitting here, this is a challenge. Less land, but more requirement. The population, this morning, population figures were shown by Thomas Lumpkin, and you see enormous. Mainstream ecology and technology development and dissemination is the road to sustainable agriculture. There's a book called Green to Evergreen Revolution. It may be in your library here, because IARI library is one of the best in the world in terms of agricultural publication. I shifted to Krishi Bhavan, as was already mentioned by Professor Chopra, Professor Mahapatro, as the Director General of ICAR. And during that period, in IARI, I wanted to strengthen the scientific infrastructure. We had a fundamental genetics unit also started. I don't want to take time what all was done. But when I went to ICR, again, I thought very important to create personnel policies. The first thing was Agriculture Research Service. There was a lot of opposition to ARS because they said you have to take state government's permission and so on to start a new national service. But I said this is a society, ICR is a society, it's a society service. And Indira Gandhi overruled all objections and approved, the cabinet approved the ARS. I'm happy there are so many ARSs here. And Dr. Ayyappan proudly says he is the first ARS who is also the DG of ICR. I'm so happy to see that. Agriculture Scientist Recruitment Board, this morning the chairman was here. National Academy of Agriculture Research Management, establishment of ICRISAT, the origin of spread of Krishi Vigyan Kendras, monsoon management. Many of these depend upon much more investment in research. Why I'm showing it, we had to fight for every paisa, and the investment which was needed for each one of them For example, the whole Krishi Vigyan Kendras at that time, they said this is not the duty of ICR. I said these are the first line, like the breeder's seed. This is the breeder's seed in extension. The first line, the purest form of extension. So there are problems which we'll have to overcome. Then in 1982, when 1980, when Indira Gandhi came back to power, she asked me to go to the Planning Commission first. We were only three of us, Dr. Manmohan Singh, Dr. Mohammed Faisal and I. Then I left for IARI from there in 1982. But if you look at the 6 5-year plan document, the first time there are chapters on environment and development. The previous 5 plans didn't have it. The first, every word of it, I wrote that particular one. The women and development. Women and development, again, the gender and mainstreaming of development. We started with the 6 5-year plan. A new deal for the self-employed. We also set up new institutions like the National Biotechnology Board, because it was clear biotechnology is an emerging science to which we have to pay greater attention. So when I discussed with then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, she said, why don't you create a National Biotechnology Board and you be the chairman of it? And so I was the first chairman of the National Biotechnology Board, National Science and Technology Entrepreneurship Development Board, and so on. Well, one of the things in the 6 5-year plan we did, Acharya Vinoba Bhave, whom all of you know by name, great man, Gandhiji's successor, he sent a note to Indira Gandhi, convert Wardha Jilla into Gandhi Jilla. So I was asked to chair a committee to convert Wardha Jilla into Gandhi Jilla. What is Gandhi Jilla? First I had to define what is Gandhi Jilla. Otherwise just changing the board of the district collector, it's a Wardha district, Gandhi district. That's very easy. You can change the name. But what is it that symbolizes? We decided, there was a very good committee, and we decided that Wardha Gandhi Jilla is one, where there should be no one below the poverty line. The same goal as the UN Sustainable Development Goals, nobody below the poverty line, not because of doles, not because of patronage, not by making people all beggars, but by creating opportunities for them to earn their livelihood. Sustainable livelihoods, how do you earn? I think there must be a copy of this report in your library. It's a very interesting report. Even now, many of the points, of course, 1982, and now times are different. But the idea how to achieve a poverty-free district based upon earnings of people, that you may like. Those who are studying here, that question of livelihood security, you may like to go through this report. Then in 82, I was tired of sitting in the Bhavan. 72 to 82, I was in various Bakashi Bhavan and then Yojana Bhavan. I thought the time has come that I should go back to a research institution. Fortunately, the IARI offered me the Director General's post, and I went to the International Rice Institute, the first among CGR institutions. And I concentrated again on some of the gaps in IARI's work. Strengthening and filling gaps in the National Agriculture Research System. Strengthening the National Agriculture System, because I made a statement which has been quoted recently in some article, where I said those countries which have strong national research systems are the ones which derive the maximum benefit from international system. If you don't have a strong national research system, then your benefit from the international research system is very, very weak. So my concentration was the national research system, starting with China, the China National Rice Research Institute, women and rice farming, genetic resources conservation. IARI Gene Bank has now, I think, about 110,000 strains of rice out of about 150,000 in the world. It has got almost 80% of the world germplasm in the IARI gem. But the invaluable help when Cambodia was liberated, and they wanted to go and start their rice cultivation again. They had lost all their germplasm, but fortunately they were preserved in the IARI Gene Bank, so from there it went. So it has become like this Svalbard, it has become a very important repository, Then one of the things which are very important is income for we started an area, rice biopark. In other words, making additional products from straw, the bran, the husk, and the grain In other words, the whole biomass utilization. For example, in our country, if we produce 100 million tons of rice, the rice plant produces about 200 million tons more of biomass, even if we have got a harvest index of about 35-40%. So now the government of India is putting up a rice biopark. Dr. Ajay Parida is here, who is the head of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. We were asked by the External Affairs Ministry to put up a rice biopark. It's almost ready. The president of Myanmar is very excited, largely because he also, like us, they are all small farmers with very little income, and more jobs for the younger people have to be created. And one of the pathways of creating more jobs, remunerative jobs and purposeful jobs, is through biomass utilization. The whole phytomass or the biomass utilization. Those who want to see more of these steps which I have mentioned in my years in IARI, there is a book on IARI 50 years of progress. They have called it the Swaminathan years. You will see what kind of changes were made at that time. Then when I came back to India in 1988, I thought time has come for me to start an institution which I think fills a gap in the country. Not that one more institution, that was not my idea, that we should start one more institution, but an institution which will fill an important gap. That means bringing science and society much closer. Science and society, the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation charter says imparting a pro-poor, a pro-nature, pro-poor, pro-woman orientation to sustainable livelihoods. We have centers in different places. I am showing this because if some of you travel any of these places, for example, in Chennai is the main headquarters in Taramani. There is also the one in Kalpetta in Kerala. It's called the Community Agro-Biodiversity. Tomorrow, I think we are discussing the Agro-Biodiversity Conference, International, Dr. Paroda, the International Conference. Then there is one in Jaipur, Odisha, which is one of the important centers of diversity of rice, Koraput district, mostly tribal, as you will see. We have, after tsunami in 2004, we got some funds from the Tatas to put up a Fish for All Research and Training Center. The only one of its kind in this country. It's a very unique one. It is in Pumpuhar, formerly called the Kaveri Pumpattinam. The Fish for All. Then there is the Bio Village, the Bio Center in Pondicherry. Most of our work are in tribal areas. Koraput is tribal area. Kalpetta, of course, planters are there, but mostly tribal people. And also Kolli Hills in Tamil Nadu. They are also largely tribal people. Very, very nice to work with them. Those who want details, they find a annual report in your library or in our website. The annual report is there. Coastal System Research. We started the first program which was started with the Coastal System Research for the simple reason of a long shoreline, nearly 7,500 kilometers, and including the Andaman Nicobar Islands and the Lakshadweep group of islands. People were not looking at the coast in an integrated way. Foresters were looking at casuarina and the forest trees. The fisheries people were looking at fisheries. But then you have to look at the coast in an integrated way, integrated coastal zone management. Biodiversity and biotechnology. Eco-technology means mainstreaming ecology and technology development, what I call do ecology. Do ecology is fundamental to achieving the goals, the present UN goals and sustainable development goals. SDGs can be achieved only if you apply more do ecology, ecological principles, achieving the same purpose for which you are doing. Information technology, we were one of the first to start what we call the information villages or the village knowledge centers. And then, of course, gender and climate change are cross-cutting themes in this whole. What we call South Asian enigma, I've been talking about some of the successes and so on, but the fact remains that in spite of extraordinary economic growth, our finance ministers are always saying 7%, 8%, 8.5% and so on. But unfortunately, population largely dependent on agriculture. 2 out of 5 children are stunted. Women and children suffer more from under and malnutrition. So today, the very first item in the UN Millennium Development Goal was reducing hunger and poverty by half. The UN Sustainable Development Goals also, the second is elimination of hunger. There are three kinds of hunger if you are doing a PhD or something on this topic of elimination of hunger. One is calorie deprivation, inadequate consumption of food, largely due to poverty. Secondly, protein hunger, protein deficiency. We are short of pulses. We are importing 4 million tons of pulses. That is why one of the first things we did was to set up the pulses lab in the genetics division here. And of course, micronutrient deficiency is called a hidden hunger. All these three forms of hunger have to be attacked in an integrated way. One method which we can do now is the biofortification method. There are naturally occurring biofortified plants like moringa, sweet potato, and millets, and so on. There are biofortified varieties by breeding, by Mendelian breeding, like what the Nirmal seeds have done in bajra, iron-rich pearl millet, zinc-rich rice, and so on. Genetically biofortified foods is also possible. It's also in progress here. The golden rice, it is called, where vitamin A rich rices and so on. So there are three methods of biofortification. The zero hunger challenge, the first calorie deprivation. Fortunately, we have the only country in the world which has got a food security bill which makes access to food, access to affordable food at a legal right, a right to food, not a patronage, a right to food at 1 rupee, 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 1 rupee for millets. For the first time, it was enlarged, as you see. Farming system for nutrition, nutrition literacy, and the genetic garden of biofortified plants, and state level food security. National Food Security Bill of 2013, a life cycle approach from birth to death, recognizing the eldest woman in the household. It's a very important one, provision that it is the woman in the household who are the custodians of food and nutrition security. Therefore, the entitlements card is given to them. Enlargement of the food basket to include millets, minor millets, and the Act confers the right to food, and thus it imposes a legal obligation on the part of government to ensure the minimum essential food production. We are establishing, as part of our farming system for nutrition program, genetic gardens of biofortified plants near the places where there is a large malnutrition burden. The genetic garden is a method of education, it's a method of nutrition literacy. You can put the genetic garden of biofortified plants, moringa, whatever it is, and then show this provides the vitamin A which you need. See, sweet potato, the golden sweet potato, it provides the vitamin A and so on. It's a very powerful method of education of the genetic garden. I also put here, it is 150 years ago, the laws of Mendel, 100 years ago, 1965, I was one of the keynote speakers at Brno, where the Mendel's garden, he did the work. This is 150th anniversary of the Mendel's work. I'm sure IARI will have a discussion, 150 years of genetics, what has happened in the last 150 years. You see, we are very rich in biodiversity, agrobiodiversity. I'm glad that the Society for Genetic Resources, they are going to organize an international conference on agrobiodiversity. It's a good thing because many people don't realize what is the wealth in agrobiodiversity we have. For example, millet biodiversity, enormous amount of rich in nutrition, climate smart, culinary diversity. In fact, I have been saying they should not be called coarse cereals. It should be nutri-cereals. Similarly, we recognize the role of local people. These are from Koraput, the different tribal groups. They maintain, for example, this group here in Kanda. You see, your cultural diversity, culinary diversity, and curative diversity. Curative diversity means medicinal plants, curing diseases. For example, this tribe Kanda maintains about 124 medicinal plants for each one of their own problem. Fortunately, the government has instituted what is called the Genome Savior Award. If any of you know very good genetic collections and maintenance, conservation being done by local communities, please do nominate them. You have to prepare the documentation because we prepare the documentation. They don't know such an award exists. First of all, the Genome Savior Award, it is our duty to help them. Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act. I prepared the first draft of this act. There was a parliamentary committee called Sahib Singh, Dr. Sahib Singh Committee. They visited our foundation, stayed for a day, and it's a very interesting documentation because for the first time we have combined breeders' rights and farmers' rights in one legislation. Such a legislation doesn't exist anywhere in the world. With the result, even until today, the UPOW Convention has not accepted our legislation for UPOW admission for the simple reason we have both farmers' rights and breeders' rights. I have been fighting for, you have to take up that cause now, that UPOW should change its name because there was some discussion in the ministry. UPOW is refusing to recognize this. I said, let them go to hell. Someday or the other they have to recognize it because the breeders and farmers are allies in the struggle for food security. You can't make breeders' rights and farmers' rights. They both have rights, and therefore breeder is a conserver, is a cultivator, and also a breeder. So there is need to restructure UPOW as the International Union for Breeders and Farmers' Rights. This will happen one day or the other. Sometimes it takes time for ideas to get through, but I'm sure someday or the other. This is the second method of biofortification, namely conventional breeding by Mendelian breeding, and one of the examples is the hybrid with Icrasat material developed by Nirmal seeds with high iron content. But you must remember, until today now we don't have any premium price given to highly nutritive crops. Similarly, even organic foods we don't get a premium price. Therefore, unless the yield is good, the farmers won't grow. If you tell them it has got a high iron, that won't strike any. If you say it gives more than 10% more yield than the previous one, they will take it up. That is what has happened with this bajra. It is higher yielding the other one. Even until today, tomorrow we have a discussion Dr. Ayyappan has called on genetically modified crops. In our own foundation, we have a strong program mainly for abiotic stresses like salt water, the sea water. If there is going to be sea level rise, how are you going to manage it, and so on. And also for all abiotic stresses, drought, floods, sea level rise. This in the Philippines, the golden rice was damaged. But today, new methods also of achieving a purpose is coming, apart from recombinant DNA, the marker-assisted selection, which is well known to you. This morning, I think the mention was made about the gene editing technology. This also requires less of regulatory mechanism than, so if you are working now, instead of fighting for, of course, recognition and so on, you can use the same, you can achieve your purpose by alternative methods of gene transfer. IARI has gone now into genome editing, a new tool for rewriting the genome code. Anticipated research for climate change, this is one of our early programs, 1990 program, anticipating climate change. We took the first one we took was for sea level rise, because that was everyone agreed, sea level rise and temperature rise. The late Dr. Sinha and I published a few papers in the late 80s and early 90s on the impact of temperature on wheat production and rice production in India. At that time, there was not that kind of realization. They are talking about 25 years ago. Inundation of low-lying coastal lands with seawater, millions, and climate refugees will become common. One of the plants which was neglected is the whole area of mangroves. Mangroves, Avicennia species. People didn't realize the importance. A lot of mangrove forests, not only in India, but also in South Asia, were destroyed for aquaculture farms and fish farms and so on. We started the mangrove conservation, and today mangroves, people, as a result of the great floods and the sea level potential tsunamis and cyclones, the super cyclone of Orissa, people started realizing wherever there was mangroves, they acted as a bioshield. A bioshield, we call it a shield against extreme. We have established a genetic garden of halophytes in Vedaranyam. Vedaranyam was the other place where there was the Gandhiji's movement. Salt Satyagraha was organized by Rajaji and Sardar Vedaratnam Pillai. And there we have a genetic garden of halophytes. Because today you don't realize the importance of halophytes, but tomorrow you will find you need genes for salt tolerance. And many of the halophytes can be also used as a cultivated crop. We have a seawater farming or biosaline agriculture, as it is now called. Biosaline agriculture, because seawater is 97% of the world's water. We complain about water, But what are we doing with 97%? This is why Mahatma Gandhi said, seawater is a social resource, is a public resource. You can't tax salt, because salt is the right of everybody to make salt from seawater. We had that vision that seawater has a larger social purpose. Well, as I said, it is our duty as scientists to get recognition to tribal people or anyone, because they may not know. For example, FAO started a program called Globally Important Agricultural Heritage Sites, GIAHS. It is like the UNESCO's heritage site. We prepared 2 proposals, both of them went through the scrutiny of peer reviews. One was Koraput, which is now today a GIAHS, genetically globally important agricultural heritage site. The second is Kuttanad in Kerala, where the farmers developed below sea level farming technique. Over 150 years ago, they started below sea level farming. Today, the government of Kerala has approved an international center for below sea level farming. It will shortly be established. Both on the one hand, rice, coconut, and on the other hand, the whole area of fisheries, marine fisheries, and so on. We also started human resource development in villages, the village knowledge centers. One of the important requirements in villages is to give self-esteem to the woman. They should be proud. People don't realize their importance. And we have an academy, National Academy of Agriculture, National Academy, Virtual Academy. And the first convocation was held here in Nas. And Abdul Kalam was then the late president, the people's president, as he's called. He was the guest, and he was so happy. He sat in that stairs, and all the women also crowded around him, and they took a photograph. And then he turned to me and said, Swaminathan, will you invite me for the next convocation? I said, sir, normally the same person doesn't give the 2 convocations. Make an exception. You call me the next convocation. So we called him the next convocation. That was in Andhra Pradesh Agriculture University, and he came again and gave the certificate to all the fellows. We have nearly 2,000 fellows. I wanted to be the world's largest academy. And some people send their biodata, PhD. I got a PhD. Please enlist me as a fellow of the National Virtual Academy. I said, this is not for PhDs. This is for village people who have done 8th class, 9th class, but who have mastered technology. We are talking about digital India. These are the people who Kalam called them, they represent the core competence of rural India. These people. Well, modern information technology is the one we started in 1992. It is published by Macmillan. If you think I'm predating some of our achievement, they are all documented. There's a book, must be in your library, published by Macmillan. New Technologies Reaching the Unreached, Information Technology is the title. The information technology led to the information villages, knowledge villages. This is one of those who were affected by tsunami very badly. A fisherman, small fisherman with a small boat. They were afraid to go to the sea after tsunami, but with the help of INCOIS in Hyderabad, now our scientists are giving data to them in their cell phone. What will be the wave height? Where will the fish be? And also because Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu have always some problem about fishermen, now the fishermen are told, if they want to learn, that you are approaching the Sri Lanka waters, their territorial waters. In other words, very valuable information could be given to them. This man checks what will be the height of the wave, where the fish are, and so on. Then my conclusion, because you're all, I was told by Dr. Mahapatra, a lot of young students, you take up challenges, new challenges. As I said, when we set up our institute in Chennai, it was not to add one more institution. It was to add to the scientific strength of this country, particularly in the area of taking science to the villages, science and rural families, and so on. Today, unfinished challenge, ending the alarming state of malnutrition in India. 39% of children under 5 are stunted, 15% under 5 are wasted, 40% of women of reproductive age are underweight, 48% of women of reproductive age are anemic. How do you bring agriculture, nutrition, and health together? All the three have to come together. We have a program called LANSA, leveraging agriculture for nutrition. And under that, this FSN, farming system for nutrition. In fact, Anupam has published a paper on this FSN in the Society's Journal. very good journal. I thank you for the way in which you are managing that journal. It's one of the fine journals. The quality of papers are excellent. So we have bring together agriculture, nutrition and health. I also chair the National Commission on Farmers. Wherever you go now in India, the farmers will say, please implement our commission's report. This is sort of everywhere. Last year I went to Amritsar, and Amritsar, the farmers all cried, when are they going to implement your report? I said, you are asking the wrong person. You should ask the people who are in a position to implement it. An effective insurance system, Parivar Bima policy against climate change. Because today farmers lose, those who commit suicide are all because they have lost their money. There is no real proper insurance against climate. Minimum support price will be based on the C2 plus 50% formula. This is one of the most controversial. The farmers want it, many of the MPs want it. But there are very many reasons, so I am not going to go into it. You can, I think the library will have the report of the National Commission on Farmers. There you will find it. Food security basket to be widened by including in PDS underutilized crops like millets. An Indian single market. The Europeans call it European Common Market, but Europe is a number of nations put together. Ours is one single nation. So we called it the Indian Common Market. Creation of special agricultural zones like the Indira Gandhi Canal, the Haryana, Punjab region. These are areas where the land should be preserved for agriculture. You know the controversy about land acquisition. We recommended areas which are important for the future of this country, future feeding of the people. How are we going to feed? Designate the Ministry of Agriculture as Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. I am very happy to say the Prime Minister announced in this August 15 speech, because those who are sitting in Krishi Bhavan, they should not only be thinking about fertilizer import and so on, but what is the income of the farmers. We said you measure your progress by the real income of the farmers. Lastly, no time to relax. There is always challenges ahead. This particularly for young people who are taking their PhD and so on. Don't take up routine work. Take some innovative work, which is important. When we started our biotechnology, it was not one more BT and so on. It was identifying the genes in mangrove species, Avicennia marina, which give resistance to tolerance to salt water, and Prosopis juliflora and so on for drought resistant. I find wherever I go, they are repeating the same thing, which we should not. We have so much of flora and fauna in this country. Very innovative work can be done by our young people. Avoiding food losses and food waste. Climate change is going to be a great challenge. Temperature, precipitation, sea level. Shrinking per capita land and water resources. Expanding biotic and abiotic stresses. Adverse cost, risk and return. That's why I told you the pricing formula I gave is absolutely someday or the other. The 4% has already been accepted. 4% interest rate. But the price for the commodity is not yet. Market volatility and above all reluctance of youth to take to farming. They don't want to go to farming. In fact, the fathers themselves, they discourage them from going to farming. Well, that was my last slide, the challenges ahead, but there is so much to do. I called it an adventure. I hope all of you will experience an adventure in your own, but don't, you see, when I applied for a IARI admission, associate IARI, when I came here, I knew one ICS officer who was collector in my area, and I went and saw him. He said, why have you come to agriculture? There is no future. You better go change, immediately sit for the competitive examination. That was a country, just Bengal famine was the backdrop of India's independence, where 3 million women, children and men died because Myanmar had been occupied by Japan. The Myanmar rice was not coming in. In that context, people felt there is no future for agriculture. And I would say India's future lies in agriculture. Otherwise, we will starve. And unlike the PL 480 of the 60s, you have no nation today which can provide that kind of assistance. There is nobody who can have got so much of surplus food. We have to depend on our own food. And our own food, evergreen revolution will come only if all of you take on these challenges, unfinished challenges, and address them. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahapatra, for asking me this.
Thank you, sir, for such an inspiring, passionate and captivating talk. May I now request the chairman of today's function, Professor V.L. Chopra, to give his valuable remarks.
Chopraji is giving comments.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I saw the program, it says chairman's remarks, made me feel very uncomfortable. How does one do that? How does one make remark on a presentation that I knew would be as lucid as you could expect it to be? But having been put into the position that Dr. Mahapatra has put me, I'll have to say something. I was just thinking that if one looks at the agricultural scenario in our country, there are three kinds of people broadly. One that theorize on how technology can solve problems, all problems. But this group, unfortunately, falls short of dirtying their hands into practical agriculture. There's a second group that believes that jugaad science is enough for solving problems of agriculture. And that's a dangerous proposition. And there's a third group which has firm belief in high quality science and proficiency of working procedures by which one can marry this high quality science with developmental niches which are trying to be addressed. And I don't need to tell you which category does the present speaker, today's speaker, belong. I can assure you I had no preview of the slides that he is going to put for this lecture. But I had known instinctively that Dr. Swaminathan will not take people's time, large number of people's time, particularly the young scholars, to be talking routine, because that he never does. Ladies and gentlemen, you have seen through the presentation what kind of philosophy guides Dr. Swaminathan in doing what he does. And he does it to perfection. And that includes the lecture today. I will not make remarks about his lecture because that would be, as we say in Hindi, chota muh badi baat. And I will refrain from doing that. I believe that this kind of a lecture, this kind of advice, this kind of participatory prescription deserves nothing short of a standing ovation. And I would like to present this to you. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your time, valuable time, in being with us this evening. I'm sure many of us will carry this as a memento for their entire lives. Thank you very much, sir.
I forgot to mention that Professor Chopra is a founder trustee of our foundation.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Honorable Director Dr. Trilochan Mahapatra to kindly do the honor of presenting a memento to the chairman of today's function, Professor V.L. Chopra, as a token of our affection and respect. I also request our beloved Dean Dr. R.K. Jain to kindly felicitate the speaker of today's session, Professor M.S. Swaminathan, with a memento as a token of our love and respect. Thank you, sir. It's time to acknowledge all those who work behind the curtain. I now request Dr. Vinod, Professor, Division of Genetics, IARI, to present the formal vote of thanks.
Most respected and revered Professor M.S. Swaminathan, Honorable Professor V.L. Chopra, Dr. R.K. Jain, Joint Director, Education and Dean, dignitaries present of the dais, distinguished colleagues and students. It's a matter of great joy and rare honor for me to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion. This special lecture, 65 Years of Adventure in Agricultural Research and Development, traverses the history of India from food scarcity to food sufficiency. What we had were just snapshots from the history and also of emerging challenges. And it is a rare privilege to listen this story of adventure directly from Professor M.S. Swaminathan, whose vision and actions ushered the era of Green Revolution in India. Sir, you are the symbol of Green Revolution in India, and we always look towards you for inspiration and direction for an ever-sustaining Green Revolution. It was a great opportunity for all of us to listen to you this evening, and I, on behalf of IRI and on my personal behalf, express my deep sense of gratitude to you for sparing time for this lecture in spite your busy schedule since morning. And in fact, the words are not enough to say my sense of gratitude. I do not have enough words to say how grateful we are feeling. We are extremely grateful for Professor V.L. Chopra, former member Planning Commission, and a renowned scientist who sowed the seed of biotechnology in India, for graciously and consenting to preside over today's event. We are grateful to you, sir. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Director IRI, Dr. T. Mahapatra, for taking initiative for this lecture and his generous support in organizing this lecture. Our special thanks to Dean and Joint Director Education, Dr. R.K. Jain, for his inspiring guidance and support to make this event a success. I also express my thanks to Dr. A.K. Singh, Head Division of Genetics, for his contribution in organizing this event. I take this opportunity to extend sincere thanks to all the dignitaries for having taken out time to be present here on this occasion. I acknowledge the contribution of all those who worked hard, both in foreground and background, and whose untiring efforts have made this event possible in a short time. A big thanks to Dr. K. M. Manjaya, in charge AIM, Dr. Rama Prasad and Dr. Vignesh from Genetics Division, Dr. Veda Krishnan from Division of Biotechnology, staff from Deans and Personal Section, E&P Section, Transport Section, Mr. Bansal and his team for making arrangement in this auditorium, and all the participating students. Finally, I would like to thank all the staff, students, and all those who are present here. Thank you. Thank you, Bansal.
Thank you. Yesterday was his dream. The brightful today was his vision. Carrying this proud legacy, let's move towards evergreen revolution. Thank you once again.
Swaminathan sir.